Usually I try to stay away from anything political because I believe as a psychotherapist that real change is the inner transformation that a person makes, and that any work outside of there is usually temporary and insufficient. But besides being a psychotherapist, I'm also a history teacher. And in the last few years, what I've been seeing more and more is people coming into my office to work on their individual issues, but the entire situation, especially in the United States, but also in the world, has really been impinging upon their mental health and well-being. So I thought I'd do a little bit of talking about that today. So the problem that I see it historically is that most countries have never really been taken over. What happens is they weaken within, and then they're open to being taken over. And whenever a country, just like an individual, begins to lose their faith in themselves, they do one of two things. They either bond together and try to rise above the situation and improve the culture. Or, like a football team that has lost faith, they begin to yell and scream at each other and blame. Unfortunately, our country has decided to go the latter route, and we're seeing it more and more. And what it reminds me of is a number of parents that I've seen over the years who have different parenting styles. Very often, but not always, it is sexual role differences. So the man very often is wanting firm consequences, discipline, rigid rules, and not very encouraging. And there is a place for that. It is incredibly important to have firm rules and guidelines and consistent consequences. If that isn't happening, the child tends to run wild. On the other side, the female very often talks about nurturing and encouragement and love and tolerance and flexibility, all of which are extremely important. And what a good parent is someone who is able to do both, and furthermore to work as a team so that they blend their style and come up with a compromise that would tend to work for the betterment of the child. If they get divorced, what usually occurs is they continue blaming for a while, and then they start getting irritated with the child in the same way that the other parent was irritated, and they begin to move closer to their position. And what we have now in this country is stereotypic behavior about either being Republican or Democrat, conservative or liberal. And the same thing is happening. So to be a conservative is to conserve what makes sense to be conserved, to be careful, to be prudent, to not run around half-cocked. And what liberal means is open, flexible, and the ability to grow. And both of those things are incredibly important and should be able to be done together. And for many years in this country, that's exactly what happened, is you had mature adult statesmen on both sides coming up with compromise situations. What we have now is gross tribalism and a over-identification with that particular tribe, and the tendency to try to humiliate and absolutely, completely defeat the other. If we continue to do so, we will destroy ourselves. And we will also limit our mental health, because our mental health is also a blending of many disparate tendencies that have to find a common balance, and hopefully reason and maturity. Unfortunately, I see very little of it in today's discourse. One of the things that happened in almost all cultures that go downhill, but especially in the Roman culture, when things started to get real bad, when the moral fiber of the culture began to wane, more and more what you were left with is bread and circus, which essentially would be violence and drama for its own sake, to keep the people from thinking about their lives and what were happening. And that is something that I see again in this culture. Our values have gone down tremendously. There is a tendency to rely on reality shows, which is absolutely the opposite of reality. And with extremes on both sides. So what news has become, instead of an intellectual pursuit, we get the craziest person from the left and the craziest person from the right. We pit them against each other on TV, and then we rate who won, and the person who won is the one who is most obnoxious and divisive. And people get off on it, and then they go into their tribal thinking and play it out on a larger scale. Again, what I would stress is there are positives and negatives on both sides of the political aisle. They are both important to remember, and that we have to look for common solutions that actually work. If we do that, we can thrive. If we don't, we will fall. So since I'm on a rant, I might as well continue a little bit. There are many different types of therapy, and one type, the one that I'm most comfortable with, is systems-oriented. And with a system, what you look at is you work very hard, and it's also very easy not to demonize one particular person. You don't look at it as if there is a person that has a problem that's ruining the system. What you have is an interaction that is ruining the system. So both people are involved with it. And if you look at the political arena today, what you see is two groups that agree in a lot of ways. They are sure that this world is screwed up, and that our country is screwed up, and that you can't trust. Everyone agrees with that. We just decide that it's either the Republicans or the Democrats that have gone ahead and made that possible. And that's way too simple. The problem is we're a really immature country. We don't think in very sophisticated ways. We tend to be very black and white. We tend to be very present-oriented. We tend to be neurotic as hell. And that has helped us in a lot of ways, and it's also got us into a lot of scrapes. And it is high time that as a country we start to grow up a little bit and think of things in a more intricate way. Again, the only way we're going to get through this is if we start realizing that there are a lot of good points on both sides, and we need to find the best of those and look inside to fix ourselves rather than demonize the other.